Recording in progress.
Yes, she is the silent partner to our games that
She's
we
our
play.
producer.
Yes. Oh,
The
thank you, lady.
automated Zoom lady.
She's like, okay, one. She's like, 3, 2, 1. And we're like,
And you freeze.
welcome to the Fleeting Thoughts podcast.
Broadcast.
My
We're
name
gonna
is
prod your thoughts.
My
that are
name is
fleeting.
Prod Gray, and this is Prod Cornwall, and we are broadcasting live from the bunker.
I think okay. This is I think what our intro should be. Are
What
you
is
ready
it?
for
Okay,
this?
yeah.
Okay. All gather. Now we've come to time where we shall discuss thoughts, ideas together in a fleeting manner. Welcome to the Fleeting Thoughts podcast. It's kind of like a throne room, you know? Somebody's calling a procession.
It's a medieval trumpet. Yes. What is that called? A court announcement. When everybody who walks in and then they say, and now presenting Channing Cornwall.
And you like walk in waving at the crowds with your gaudy robes and
or you don't you just
jewelry.
walk in, you know, all fucking
pompous,
regal and pompous.
Shaggy lord with your little bags of money and
one of those.
There's like a farting duck in there apparently.
Yeah, that's how the sound that comes out when I do it.
A bit of a broken trumpet.
A very broken trumpet. Oh, yes, that's the name of my band. We are
broken
trumpet. And we have all broken shitty instruments.
And we don't tune it because tuning is unnatural.
Yes, we play God's instruments out of our buttholes and
don't mind the rust on your lips from the mouthpiece. That's fine. That's just age. You can lick it off and carry about your day.
Yes, don't worry about yesterday's trumpet saliva crustaceans. Those are part of God's instruments.
But there's blood on your guitar strings. It's just from the gentleman who used it before. You no need to change them or clean them.
The gentleman.
There's blood mixing with yours as you play and get your blisters.
Is that your blood, gentlemen?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, it will mix fine with mine.
I heard from a local doctor that perhaps diseases could be carried in the blood, and I scoffed at that man. What kind of fool would believe that diseases are in blood? Diseases come from the cold outside.
They come from your humors, which are not very funny. They are less than humorous.
This doctor thinks he's some kind of scholarly fellow. Who's a fool, is what I say.
That's right. I will go on living the way I live and be damned to the doctors and charlatans of the world with their science and their chemistry.
Chemistry. You want to talk about jokes.
Oh, you went a little New Yorker there. You changed it up. You went a little New England, eh?
I felt like we were moving through time as this sketch is playing out.
Okay. All right. I don't know what led you to believe that with the language you were using. It was quite old fashioned. Oh, speaking of old fashioned, I could use a drink. It's my guy with the cigar again.
I like to think that he's just sucking on a microscopic penis. This is not a cigarette. This is a little.
And he's very excited about it.
Yeah. I see it. It makes me so happy.
You got a tiny dick, eh?
I compare it to mine, see? And it makes mine look enormous. You're like, yeah, see? Look at this little microscopic bastard.
Yeah. For the listeners, there's a gesture happening that's hard to describe now that I have attempted.
It looks like I'm sort of wiggling a cigarette in front of my face, but also at the same time I could be
Channing's head, sucking dick involves wiggling your fingers around.
Well, it's because you're sort of massaging it with the fingers, so you're not doing all the work with your mouth, you know?
You don't massage that way. You massage the balls. Massage the tiny balls. Maybe that's what it is.
Whoa!
I'm playing the world's tiniest balls for your pain and suffering. Yes, pain and suffering. I wish. So there are two things that I wish You know how like
I'm glad you've narrowed it down to just two.
over the course. Yeah, I'm not greedy. Over the course of like a movie or something, there'll be like a compilation of every time somebody says something that they say a lot. You know, like in an office, they'll have like a compilation of every time he said that's what she said, right? And it'll just be one after the other. That's what she said, that's what she said, that's what she said, that's what she said. Something like that. I wish if I had a recording of my entire life, there are oh, I'm forgetting the thing I was trying to get to. I wish there was a compilation of things. Oh yeah, I remember now.
Okay.
There's a compilation of the things that I've done, right? And there are two things that I wish were compiled. One is every time that I came up with a cool band name, right? Like Broken Trumpet or whatever I said at the beginning of this thing that I forget already.
It was Broken Trumpet.
Right? Broken Trumpet. That's the name of the band. I wish every time I came up with a cool name, I should be writing them down. Obviously I'm not, but I wish I had been writing.
Well, you're relying in this analogy, you're relying on the fact that God's creating a vignette of your life right now. So you don't have, you shouldn't have to keep track.
He's creating a compilation of every because he's recorded everything and he's gonna like give this to me on my deathbed. And then the other time is every time I picked my nose. I just think it'd be a hilarious, very, very long compilation of me just going like this and like in the car, like looking around, seeing if anybody in the other cars saw me. It'd be like
I think about that sometimes
thing in the world.
When you're sitting in your car, it's like you feel safe to do whatever.
I know, right?
If you're the only one in there, and so it's like
you realize there's windows.
You do something, and then you look over, and the person in the car right next to you at the stoplights is fucking staring at you, and you're like, "Damn it!"
Yeah, and
I have to drive a different way to work for the rest of my life.
She's your teacher. She's your hot teacher. And you're
like,
well, there goes my chances of banging my hot teacher as you're driving in your car.
I had such a good chance with her too. I could feel it, and now it's all for naught. It's all shattered. Feel it calling in the air tonight. My problem is that my nostrils get itchy, like right up, where the little tufts of hair are in the nostrils.
Yeah,
so
that's
like
true.
Sometimes you just want to like scratch it. And you're like, everybody thinks I'm just fucking picking my nose right now, but really I'm just trying to scratch this little corner up here.
Sometimes I pick my nose and then I like pretend I'm just biting my fingernails because I'm really just eating my boogers.
He's not on some snot.
But I'm like, no, I was just biting my fingernails after picking my nose.
Yeah. As you're talking, the boogers like on your lip. You're like, I'm getting away with this. I'm pretty sneaky. I'm pretty sneaky. You got boogers all up in your teeth, leaking into your beer, all crusty, and the person that you're talking to is trying really hard to keep it together.
Yeah, because I'm doing this while talking to people. I'm that fucking.
Well, I just imagine in this analogy, you're sort of like right, and then you're like, oh shit, this person watching. Hey,
oh no,
I'm just putting on my nails and just fucking snot on your face.
Yes. I want a compilation of that in my life.
It's a compilation that would start off very humorous, but then like 40 hours later, you'd just be crying. Like, I did this so much.
It like slowly, like my face turns from like innocent to like really sad adult.
You suddenly realize that your life is just a menagerie of eating your own boogers and coming up with cool band names. That's like all you contributed to the world.
And I didn't contribute them because no one saw them.
You didn't even remember all of them.
Yeah, so. I don't remember. I need God's compilation.
So he just plays that for you at the pearly gates, and then when it's over, when it's finally over,
how you spend your time?
He's just like,
all right, get in, you fucking whippersnapper.
I really shouldn't let you in after watching that, but
there technically aren't rules about these things,
right?
But I want you to
technically
be ashamed.
None of that was a sin. It was poor creativity and some mild disgust.
I want you to know this is how you spent your life. It's a huge waste. Technically, I can't kick you out for it, but I want you to remember as you go in there with all the fun, heavenly activities that I somehow let you in to see. Remember what you did. Yeah. And then I'd go into heaven, and then I'd just be picking my nose and fucking coming up with dumb band names. Because that is my heaven. God.
Everybody in heaven just talks shit about you. Oh, look, it's fucking Joe.
Yeah, and they played the whole compilation for everyone as I'm coming in. And now presenting
Band
Joe
name
Gray.
Boogerman.
Wait, what? Oh, I have to go by the name of those two things. I don't get to be Joe in heaven. Oh, that's fucking lame.
I think it would be like Joseph Gray, and then
Yeah,
your
there you
title
go.
would be Band Name Boogerman.
Which would be a good band name.
Yeah. And then you just be like,
It's,
man, why wasn't I like a panda conservationist or something
yeah.
fucking
Oh man, I
cool?
should have spent my life doing something meaningful.
Right.
Oh
Band
man.
Name Boogerman. Well, it's a title that just hovers above your head like
Yeah.
an
Like a
avatar in an
video game.
MMO. Yeah.
That's what heaven really is, because this is all a simulation anyway, and you don't
True.
get to like forget your past in heaven. You just continue the game.
It's true. Yeah. Just in a different setting. You just kind of like
Mm.
went to the next level, I guess.
Yeah. It just says you died in front of your face when you die.
Where do you think you go after heaven? You know?
After Where's that? Where else is there to go? It's all downhill from there. Right to hell. All right. Happy Columbus Day. Speaking of
yeah,
heaven
or
and hell.
Indigenous Peoples Day, as they now also refer to it as.
I think
It's split on the calendar these
the
days.
idea that there's a controversy remotely around this bullshit made up day is, to me, I started thinking about it today and I was like, oh my gosh, I watched a video about it, and all the YouTube videos are like 3-second explanations, because it takes 4 seconds to understand the concept that people don't like Columbus because of the genocidal impact he had on the native peoples, and then the people who are the remnants of the native peoples who are like, or sympathetic to them, and they're like, why don't we just, I don't know, let's, instead of talking about this guy who brought over disease and death
and then took slaves and started the
slavery,
slave trade.
yeah, and like, well,
he
did what was, I think, inevitable, and we can demonize him all we want, but what he did was what tons of people were doing during that time, which was spreading the good civilization that they were from, and bringing it to all parts of the world. But that's, I mean, that was like, that was the name of the game, and that's still the name of the game, which is power and resource allocation, or resource gathering. You know, I mean, Columbus was not like a unique figure in the world, and he wasn't a hero, and I don't think he was a demon either. I think he was just another fucking, you know, rich guy going about trying to make as much money and fame for himself in the world. And what happened was horrible, and I think generally inevitable, because they had no moral system that would have like stopped them from doing this.
Well, the other thing is he actually did go to prison. Like, he went to prison in Spain because of the things that he did, but like with the slave trades, and
it was already treated
like Spaniards, and so it's because some people, you know, their defense is like, oh, you can't judge somebody like Christopher Columbus against the contemporary mindset because things are different now, which things are different. But at the same time, he also still went to prison for the things he did. So it's not like the things he was doing were acceptable back then. He, you know,
he took some liberties.
Yeah, the guy was fucked. For sure.
And so anyway, you've got that argument, which I think is just like, you know, you can make that argument about a ton of different, you know, people in history, and giving him a day makes no sense. The whole like sailed the ocean blue and he discovered America and it was all peaceful is the same lie about Thanksgiving, it being all peaceful and all that stuff. It goes to show that like myths and histories are told in a particular fashion, and you're naive to believe them. And then there's the idea that we should have a day for Indigenous peoples, and if we're going to have a day for people, we can have a day for people. I don't care, but I also don't care. Like, I don't, like, it doesn't help me do anything. It doesn't matter much to me. Like, I don't like holidays is what I'm getting at least nationally supported holidays. Like, I don't like Christmas, I don't like Thanksgiving, I don't like these days that someone arbitrarily dictates, like, now I have to pay attention to this particular thing, or person or event or whatever. I think that I think of history as more of a factual, unbiased kind of thing that has kind of relative significance to my life. Like, some of that stuff that happened in the past matters, some of it doesn't. And I don't think there's a lot to be gained from putting a ton of attention on it, in general. Like, let's move forward and not back is kind of my thinking. I'm just busy. I'm not a historian, and I think people put a ton of significance on history, and obviously history is full of factual events if we can be unbiased about it, which we never are, and the people telling the stories never are. And so, it's just interesting that people get in such heated arguments about how we should remember something or how we should think of the past instead of talking about what there is to do in the future. Like,
well, I feel like part of
I don't know.
the celebration is that so what's interesting about Columbus Day specifically is like when I was in elementary school learning about Christopher Columbus, you learned all about him as this great explorer who discovered America by accident, and was like chummy with the natives, basically. Like that, like I remember that was like what we were taught, like, oh, we owe the founding of America to this great courageous explorer who challenged the idea that the world was flat. And so that's all I knew about Christopher Columbus when I was a child. And then when you grow up and actually read biographies about him and like actual historical accounts, and you realize what a horrible person he was. Also, he was still an explorer and all these other things, but he was also a terrible person who inflicted a great deal of harm on indigenous people in North America. And the funny thing is, he didn't even land in like the actual mainland North America. He landed in what is now known as Puerto Rico. So he like didn't even, the idea that he founded America isn't even true. And Vikings and other groups of people had found this land as well.
Yeah.
Also, finding or discovering America is an interesting idea because it's like, well, people weren't here already. It's not like it was this uninhabited land that now it's like millions of people lived here, all these tribes. And
there is an argument to say he did discover America for his people,
well,
like for himself,
people.
just like I discover music for myself. It's already been there. Like other people have discovered music. I don't think it's not a good argument to say he didn't discover something because it was already there. He didn't like find it for humanity. Humans were already there.
But I think that's
for Spain,
the way that
he found it, and he brought enough people to start to colonize it. And if you think about, like, Spain colonized the shit out of the Americas. Texas, and a lot of Mexico, it's all was Spanish owned for a very, very long time, probably because of Columbus. And
well, I just mean like, so when like I was taught to me as a kid, they literally
they made it seem like there were
they
no
made it
people
seem
there.
like he discovered this land, like nothing was here before, and then suddenly he showed up and everything was discovered. It was put on
when
the
he
map.
like brought Indians there.
And so it's like
how it happened.
And then I remember, as I got a little bit older, you learned like, oh, actually, there were Viking groups
that's what you find
like,
out.
It's
like it's
here.
all a lie because Vikings
and then it's just
were
like,
there
as
earlier.
you get older and you learn more, like the layers of lies start coming down, and you realize that like a bunch of the stuff you were told about him was just bullshit for the most part. And I think that there's people who accept that, right? And then they continue to learn more about what really happened. And then you have people who just kind of didn't really learn much beyond what they were told when they were kids. So they hold on to this belief about who he was. And then, now you have a bunch of people who don't want to support him. They talk about what a monster he was, and they just, they don't want to celebrate this day. And then you have these people holding on to this like tradition, quote unquote, to celebrate what this person did. So I think those ideas end up clashing.
But in such a minor, dumb American way. Who got? Ugh.
The only reason why kids cared about Columbus, but the only reason why anybody ever cared is it was like an extra day off from school, like that. That's from really school, why kids cared. Yeah,
but it's not like one of the main holidays that you get a full day off anyway, and those are dwindling anyway. Like as far as like from retail America or whatever, retail America. I'm coining that term, by the way. That's my new term. That's my new band name too. It's really like one of those things where you like, I get the arguments. I've never been into like people idolizing anyone. I don't think people should idolize human beings.
No, because we're
Maybe
all
it's
kind of shitty.
yeah, maybe it's because of like my Christian background or my atheistic notions as well. Like both of those together teach me like don't idolize people,
Mhm.
and I don't think you should idolize anything in general. Um, because you're making it out to be pure when it isn't pure. There's no pure anything. You're just creating a fantasy around these figures in the world.
Well, I
And
think
then what's the point?
part of it
Why?
too is like there's just like weird need to hold on to
Yeah,
tradition.
of course.
And so I think that some people view it as like an attack on the traditions of America that we celebrate this Columbus
Yeah,
Day by wanting to switch it out for Indigenous Peoples Day or something.
yeah.
Like I feel like they're just like, oh, well, if they take Columbus Day away from us, when's it gonna stop? What's next? You know what I mean? And
He was Spanish anyway. America didn't exist until the Revolutionary War when
Mhm,
we fought British people who were really the people who came over and colonized America.
mhm,
And he just kind of like created a trade route that allowed other big nations and big ships to come over. And he probably wrote enough down that it worked and all that. It's just yeah, they made I think what happened is they made a big myth around him around the revolutionary time,
mhm.
around that 1700s. And before then, it wasn't that big of a deal. He was just some guy who went over there and fucking, uh, you know, got lost, found a route to a new land that they could exploit. And then in 1700s, during the Revolutionary War, British came up with this myth that to get everyone rallied around figure, and
Mhm.
then it just went nuts after that. But yeah, I don't care about that tradition at all. Um,
My
but I
favorite
also
thing
yeah.
about Columbus is that he called the native people when he got here Indians, thinking that he landed in India. And
Hmm.
then even after he discovered that he was actually not in India, he still
Hmm.
continued to call them Indians. And that is like a term
Yeah,
that
you should have called
is
them
pervaded through
Puerto
time. Like
Ricans. What if they had all been called Puerto Ricans and all
Puerto
Indians would have been
Ricans.
called Puerto Ricans?
That'd have been interesting.
Been different. Yeah, there'd be a
But
lot more
same
Puerto Ricans
concept,
out
different
there.
name. Because
Yeah,
white people can't take the time to actually learn all the tribe names. It's just too much work. You're just
there are a
Indians,
lot of
all of you.
tribe
There
names actually.
are. That's another
Um,
thing. Like you don't realize when you
yeah,
like I when I was a kid, they were Indians. Like I grew up watching a lot of like Clint Eastwood
yeah,
westerns,
sure.
and so they refer to them as
Yeah,
Indians. Like
but I took
very rarely would you
I
hear
took a
like a
class
tribe name.
in high school called Pacific Northwest History, and it talked about like the Clatsop and the Tillamook and the
Hmm.
all these different. Obviously, I don't remember that now because I'm not smart enough. But
Well,
there's
and what's
tons of
interesting
different
is
tribal names that still keep their names for areas in Oregon
well, and I did,
and
but and you
Washington.
hear those names, but I didn't real like sometime like when I was younger, I didn't realize that like Tillamook. I
Yeah,
just assumed
it's
that
a
was a place in Oregon
tribe.
that makes
Yeah.
cheese, and then you suddenly realize, oh, there was actually a Tillamook tribe. That's where its
Hmm.
name derives from.
And
Because yeah, there are a
they
lot of it.
smelled really weird and they smell like cheese. A lot of the Indian names as well, Native American names, were like mispronunciations,
Hmm.
misinterpretations, mistranslations. Um, um, Willamette and stuff like that. A lot of
Yeah, it's
these
hard to
names.
find translations for a lot of their dialogue because I mean they weren't writing it down. Those tribes. There was a lot of
Yeah,
oral
and a lot of
history.
that got extinct, and they,
Uh huh.
I'm sure plenty of tribes we never knew their names particularly because they were small. What I think is interesting as well is that no matter like let's say Columbus came over, this is not a good defense of anyone, but it'll
Hmm.
sound like it is. Let's say he came over and he was nice and he was friendly and he traded, still millions of Native Americans would have died because of
Oh
the
yeah,
diseases that he
smallpox.
brought
Yeah.
over. And so I think that a lot of people think that the disease warfare concept was purposeful, but they didn't have germ warfare. They
No,
didn't
they didn't
have
know
a
anything
theory of
about it.
germs. So no matter what happens, if one group that has been separated from another group, they meet, somebody's going to die. And the Native Americans didn't have immunities to what the Spanish people brought over, or British people, or during the West when they were, you know, killing people in the West. Part of what was happening was a lot of people were dying from disease and from other, issues and gunshot wounds. And I just think it's interesting because we don't really know who died, how many people died from what and
Mhm.
because of what. And I don't want to give Columbus credit for killing everyone, or British people, or new Americans for killing everyone, because even if they had been perfectly moral and nice, a shit ton of people would have died.
Yeah.
And that's just the case for discovering new cultures and new groups. And I think that's part of one of the reasons why it's people are tribal and they are scared of other groups, is because whenever two groups would meet, they would probably find out that people were just dying all of a sudden and they didn't know why. And they probably just chalked it up to don't meet new people. And so I think we still have that ingrained in our kind of psyche or whatever, that, scary groups and people, didn't have a germ theory back then, so they weren't afraid. They would just go, hey, these are people showing up on the shore. I guess different dispositions, maybe sometimes they were afraid, sometimes they weren't. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's just one of the things I think is more of a kind of inevitable issue, is people meeting each other and shit happens.
Well, and like that, and I
Obviously
agree. It's kind of
enslaving
like
people is not.
Yeah, I think that's
I'm not.
like
That's not good.
that's yeah, I think that's where like a lot of umbrage people have with Columbus, like the tragedy of however many millions of people died from these diseases. That's more of a victim of just like tragic biology and bacteria. That I mean, it'd be
Just a
different
lack of
if they
knowledge.
were like scientifically advanced and they knew like, hey,
Yeah.
when we meet these people, we're going to be
Took
introducing
'em-
this new
yeah.
bacteria into there, and it's going to be devastating. They didn't know that. I mean,
Yeah,
who knows
I'm not
if
convinced
they
that
would have.
even like smallpox was done deliberately to kill Native Americans. Maybe it was by some clever
Yeah.
dude, but in general, I think diseases like that probably spread, and probably some of it spread due to like sexual transmitted diseases and things like that too, because people were probably fucking and raping and all sorts of weird things.
Yeah.
It was a very brutal and uncivilized time, and I think it's hard to relate to what it would be like to live back in those times, when there weren't cameras and TVs and soap and such things.
Gotta love that soap.
Soap is important. There's like certain hygienic things that were invented, like plumbing and safe drinking water, and obviously electricity, that just changed the world in ways that are just, I think, unrelatable to people before those things.
I don't know what to do when like there's like a thunderstorm in the afternoon and my power goes out, and I start panicking a little
Just
bit.
cry.
You're just like, oh my god, I can't
curl
do
up in a
anything.
ball.
But
I
think,
am. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Damn.
I think that the big issue with Columbus is more his treatment of
fuck him.
The
That's
natives.
easy.
Like, I mean,
It's
the disease
easy.
thing is awful, but I would be pretty willing to bet that was probably at least not initially intentional. Maybe they pieced it together later, like, oh shit, we can make these people sick somehow, and they use that to their advantage. But I mean, I think when they initially met them, I don't think they showed up first thing on the beach and they're like, yeah, let's get this smallpox over here.
Yeah. I'm sure they just were like, hey, here's a whole group of people we can fucking dominate because we have weapons that are way superior, and we will do whatever we want.
Yep.
What do we want?
Oh,
we want
and sex trafficking, basically, and all kinds of horrible things. But I like the idea that they tried to switch it to indigenous people, and but I feel like you could also still celebrate Columbus Day in so much that you could look at it as a day of like an opportunity to learn from mistakes of the past, right? To like acknowledge
oops day.
Yeah. But just to like acknowledge that, yes, this is a person who existed, who was an explorer, who did some things. And then but here's also the truth. Like these are he was not a good person.
Yeah.
So, because I think that's what sometimes people miss in history is it's like, you get taught like one side of it growing up, and then as you get older and you learn more and more, you realize how much more gray it really was, or darker it was in the case of Columbus. And so I think some people are just resistant to that because they can't let go of this idea that they have of these people, even though facts have been presented to them that paint that person in a very negative light.
I blame the school system.
Yeah, no, I do. Because why, as a kid, I'm not saying that you need to like teach first graders, oh, Christopher Columbus came over here and then enslaved a bunch of people and was raping 9-year-old native girls and all this stuff.
That's very specific.
you can, I mean, there's obviously a way you can distill it down to be like, he came over here, he discovered things. He helped establish these trade routes, but then also he was not very nice to the people over here for, whatever reasons you want to give them that are close to the truth without necessarily being blatant. And then like continue to elaborate on that education as people get. I mean, I feel like a high schooler should be able to handle like the truth about Christopher Columbus.
Of course.
But when you start off telling kids that he was this awesome explorer and all that, he had this great idea and he came over here and made friends with the Indians, like like Thanksgiving, it's like, oh, the Pilgrims and the Indians came together and they had a good time and ate turkey. No, not really, actually.
Yeah. But mommy, what happened to all the Indians?
Why aren't they around as much
It's a
anymore?
long story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. History is tricky because it seems to be very, very important to people. And it's like a record, but the record is not very accurate mostly. And as time goes by, records get degraded. And so the longer it is ago, the longer time has passed, the less truth exists within the record, in my opinion. And so even things that were written down, even things that were even like we're going to have a record from video and from audio and from photography that is immense in the modern times, but over time some of that will degrade and die and be useless and be pointless and be inaccurate and will not make sense to future people. And so our confidence in our records is too high, just like our confidence in everything is too high. Our confidence in our own science is too high. Our confidence in our own beliefs about how everything works as an individual would have, our little paradigms that we create we're just too confident in what we think actually happened and what the lessons are that happened in the past. And then people just hold on to that story or that myth or that fucking religious, parable. And they want to just live their life thinking that that's how everything was. And this is the lesson we should learn and everything like that. And I just think it's more muddled. It's just not that simple. It's like, what history should we be teaching? Should we be teaching the history of all these different events in the world? Should we focus on World War II? Should we focus on the history of specific races in specific places, which rhymes?
Mhm.
That could be good.
Well,
so I just think
kinda
it's just
see that a
interesting.
little
There's
bit.
just so much history. What
Well,
do we need to put our time into?
Well, and in terms of history, I think it is skewed a little bit depending on where you are, because I know, like especially like the Deep South, their history lessons are
So that to
considerably
me is so
different.
weird. It doesn't make
It's
any sense that history should be biased.
But it is biased, especially
It is.
during the Civil War era, which I think is the big divergent point,
It's
depending
so
on where you are in
silly.
the United States, because like
What's wrong with those people?
right? Well, and in reality, it's like the Civil War wasn't that long ago. It's like 160, 170 years ago at this point. And so it's like, I mean, it's a lot of time, but also not very much time in the grand scheme of things. And so it's like, you have people who had great, great, great grandparents fighting in it, and so it's like not that far removed. And I think that it takes so long for culture to shift and change. And when everybody that you're raising, you just instill with the beliefs that were instilled upon you, it just makes it a long process to break the wheel.
The public school system, a lot of times, like, people just take it for granted and they're just like, well, we have to teach them history or else they're going to repeat it or whatever. I don't remember shit from high school. I don't remember shit from elementary school. It had almost, other than the basics of like how to think a little bit and how to do a little bit of math, like, I don't remember fucking history that much, and it has almost no bearing on the way I live my life. So it's like we put all this significance in these little fucking educational events in life. But what do we really, I mean,
I think people just like history
people
because
just
it's
fucking work at Taco Bell. They don't, what does it fucking matter?
True. I don't need to know that Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 while invading the soft
kids
taco.
are on fucking TikTok. They don't give a shit about Native American fucking nothing.
Nope, not
They
unless
just
you're
pretend like they
in
do
that
because
culture.
that's the talking that people talk about everything as if it's moral and they have to have opinions and
Hmm.
all this stuff, but really nobody's doing nothing. They're just going about their day, living their fucking lives.
That's why I think with the Christopher Columbus like thing, like controversy, I feel like it's probably a very small group of loud people that are making a big deal. I think most people don't give a shit. If they told me, yeah, we're gonna do Columbus Day tomorrow, it's Indigenous People Day, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Perfect.
That's
It
fine.
will
Yeah,
have exactly the same effect on
yeah, it's gonna be you're gonna get a federal holiday. Great.
yeah. I have pretty strong opinions about um the taking for granted the continuation of traditions and cultural like people just being like my culture has to be preserved regardless of anything. And I don't really get it. Um I don't relate to it. To me
I don't
culture
either. I don't really
is
have any
not
like
like that.
traditions. If like
Yeah.
if Vanessa wasn't didn't celebrate like Thanksgiving and Christmas, I don't even think I'd fucking do anything on those. I don't
I
care. I'd just
barely
be like,
think
oh,
about those days.
I get the a couple extra days off from work because it's a recognized holiday. But I just don't really care. I'm like, why do I have to have a day? Like, I mean, I know people use Thanksgiving and Christmas as an opportunity to come together as like a family and share a meal together. And all, it's like, why don't you do that anytime? Like, why does it have to be this specific
Yeah.
day? Why are we even celebrating this? I don't think anybody even really knows what it is anymore. It's just a traditional thing that is celebrated by a majority of the population in our country, and
Yeah.
so we just fucking
I think
live by it.
it's another like distraction from the people who actually like make decisions. Like the people who really need to be learning lessons from history are people in politics and people in the government and people who are military leaders and any leader of a situation should know the history of that, like leader of a situation, leader of like a organization should know the history of that organization and the like spider web network of effects that decisions have. um and knowing those stories is helpful. Like I guess if you're like the owner um of a business, you might need to know the history of that business, the history of the market, the history of the industry, and the history of um like tax law or some shit.
Hmm.
But like that specific like pragmatic knowledge, whereas history in general is very like sporadic and confusing and and just trivia facts. So
Well, I
it's
mean,
interesting.
I guess you could use it, in the case of Christopher Columbus, is like a launching point to discuss like the idea of morality and slavery, like themes and ideas
Yeah.
based off of like things that have happened. Like this is a thing that really happened. This
Yeah.
is what happened. Like this is why in today's society this is morally
Yeah, but
apprehensive
he's not
and
a good example of any of that. If you're going to
no,
use,
no.
slavery has tons of examples all throughout
Oh yeah,
America
yeah.
and all throughout the world. And I mean, for all of history, slavery was just rampant, and you were lucky to not be on the side of the slaves, and if you were poor, you were pretty much a slave, like in feudal systems.
Hmm.
And so yeah, Columbus is just he's like a he got way more hype than he needs. He doesn't need to be talked about, I don't think, at all.
No,
Just
I
don't
don't think
talk
so
about him.
either.
If we want to talk about Native Americans, let's talk about the actual history of Native Americans. Let's talk about like different events that happened throughout history that we have records of. But let's find out what records they have that go past that, go beyond that. Um, and unfortunately, there's so few Native Americans with that knowledge that it's just going to be mysterious. It's going to be most of that history is lost,
Hmm.
and we have to just live with that and move on. I, I, I mean, at least for me, like
Hmm.
I don't care what anybody else does. with that information.
Well, I think also the importance of it probably is like a cultural thing. Like if you're
obviously if you're
a
Native
part of
American,
a
you have a different
tribe,
opinion.
like that, it's gonna be
That's
far more
fine.
important.
You're
To
allowed
you.
to have a different opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't get to tell me, like, I'm not that any Native Americans doing this, but I'm just saying, like everyone wants to think that everyone is like should be understanding and sympathetic and like I don't understand what it's like to grow up as a Native American, and a Native American doesn't know what it's like to grow up as a you know, slightly shorter than average half Jew, you know, whatever it is that I am. I don't even know how to describe
That's
myself.
okay. You're getting there. It's like a Heinz 57
I'll get there
situation. It's
eventually.
okay.
Give me enough, podcasts, and I'll figure out who I am.
We're gonna
ethnically.
retitle this show "The Discovery of Joe."
Yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, and so I have like two minds when it comes to like the continuation of your historical racial situation, and it's a huge topic, and I don't want to go into it too much. But one is um like I get that is a big thing to glom onto, like the history of your people. When I was younger, I cared more about like my Jewish heritage than I do now, and I don't care about it almost at all now. I don't even know if I care about it at all. But then there's also like, okay, so what now? What do you do now? Like, how does continuing to be mad about the injustices of your ancestors support you and allow you to create your own new good successful life? And I think that's what's people need to figure out.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I mean, sometimes if you're so caught up living in the past, you're not doing anything in your present or preparing yourself for the future. So which is true for
if that's what you want to do,
really.
If you want to live in the past and you want to live in the history and allow that to, and just tell everybody about it, and your job is to be a voice for the history of your people, that's fine. But there's going to come a point where it's not going to be heard by everybody in the way that you want, and you're going to die, and people are going to do new things, and your group is going to do new things, and there's change is just going to happen. And it's a bit callous, I guess, to just say get over it, but that's not really what I'm saying anyway.
Sometimes something I get hung up on when like things, especially from a past before any of us were alive, is brought up, is just like the difficulty in, it's like you have to acknowledge that those things happened and that they still happen to some degree today. But at the same time, it's like a lot of people who are alive today didn't, I mean, you or I didn't have anything to do with that. I mean, maybe I have a great grandfather somewhere along the line that was a piece of shit slave owner, but it's like
you're more likely than I am. You probably have British history.
Oh yeah,
British, Irish. Cornwall is very British.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure there's a place called Cornwall in England.
Yeah, there's no secrets about the heritage of my family or my ancestors.
Yeah,
but it's tough because sometimes it's like you want to acknowledge the struggles of other people and other cultures, and then at the same time, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, I get that things fucking suck for some people, but at the same time, like I didn't do any of, like I didn't have any part of that. And just mean, and then sometimes this is probably going to come, I don't know how to,
I know it's impossible to talk about.
Well, because it's like, okay, so let's say you're a 18-year-old black man. It's like,
we're going there.
We're going there.
Started Native American.
So it's like I will not deny that there are racial issues in our culture, right? And then there's like a whole, this is part of the critical race theory, which I don't want to, obviously we don't want to get into.
Yeah, I know.
But part of that is that like things that happened, even in like the 30s and 40s are still affecting things today because of, how it created social inequality, basically, that we're still trying to work on overcoming. But, in the case of like slavery, for example, it's like if you're an 18-year-old black kid today, you don't know anything about being a slave because you weren't a slave. So it's like, and just in the same way that like I never owned a person before, I have nothing to do with that. I feel like they don't necessarily have as much. I don't know. This is where I get caught up. I'm like,
It's too
none
big
of
of a
us were
topic.
alive
Yeah.
then. So it's like sometimes I don't understand what
Yeah.
people want. I'm like, what? So what do you want? Because
I don't
the
think they
things that
want
you're,
anything from you anyway. That's the
yeah,
problem with the way people talk, is they talk as if groups of people, like, who's in charge? Who do they like? If there are laws that cause problems for it, like in injustice laws, just the law, just I don't know. You
well,
know
I
what I mean?
think
Like, who, they don't want anything from you. You can't do anything.
that's what
They
I
just
mean.
want
And
you to,
so
like, not be racist. So don't be racist, Channing. Don't do racist shit.
I know.
Don't engage in racist law making. Don't wrongly accuse people based on their race. And those are all things that you already do
Yeah.
and don't
No, I
do.
just it's
You're a good person. I
oh,
would
thank
rub
you.
your head right now if I could.
Thank you. Well,
I
I
mean,
wasn't seeking
you know,
like vindication. That's just sometimes when you get into conversations like this and you start kind of getting out of the weeds, I start getting lost because I'm like,
very
well, but
easy.
this doesn't really matter to us anymore because neither
Doesn't
of us
matter to
were really
you.
personally affected.
White
I mean, maybe I'm just
privilege.
speaking for myself because I'm just a straight
Everybody's
white
only
guy.
speaking for themselves. That's all
Yeah.
there. I don't agree that anyone can speak for anyone else.
Mhm.
It's not real.
Yeah.
The only times that works when somebody is an appointed representative, which is like in a business, you have a
Mhm.
CEO, they're an appointed representative. You have people, anybody who works for a place ends up being a representative of some sort. They're typically not an appointed representative, but no one is an appointed representative of any race. It's not how it works. And I am not speaking on behalf of anyone other than myself when I'm talking socially or on this podcast or with my friends. When I'm at work, I'm representing my business, and I have to take that seriously. And I say things with that filter. Um, and when some people talk, they talk as if they know and they represent groups, and they don't. I mean, they represent themselves, and they can talk about their own experiences, and they can talk about the way that they see history and the way that they see culture, just like I can.
Mhm.
But I don't think that people use very vague terms when they're talking about these things, like um, like like America did this, or we did that, or you did this, or white people did that, or black people did this. It's just too vague.
Well, once you start lumping into a category, right? Because if you're like, well,
Isn't that
all
racist?
straight white men are racist pigs, it's like,
That's
well,
racist.
technically I identify as somebody in that group, and I don't feel like I am that whatever, you're proclaiming I am. And that's sometimes too where I get like this the discussion of racism gets tricky because I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I don't know when something is racist or when it's not. I mean, there's the obvious examples, right? Like, if you can't walk up to somebody, call them an N-word, you should not, be judging somebody based off their skin. But then, when people make proclamations that all white people are racist, my first thought in my logical brain is, well, isn't that a form of racism for you to say that
Well,
all white people are
so
racist? Because what you're saying is that,
here there are two different. Well, the term racist has gotten very confusing
yeah, it's
over time.
slapped
So
and used
there's two
everywhere.
different definitions that I know of. One is racism is just um, a a a bias toward a particular race that is uh, makes you think something negative based on somebody's race, based on their skin color, based on their what they look like. That's race. Anytime that's the case, you lump everyone of that group in together, and you think something negatively based on that, like all Jews are cheap. That's
Mhm.
racist. All Asians have small dicks. That's
Mhm.
like a racist, funny, super hilarious joke.
Well, and so
Um,
those are like the obvious examples,
right,
right?
and
Those are easy to
that's
identify.
all we've all know that, and that's like boring to everybody now. So
Mhm.
now there's another type of racist, which is if your group of people, the race that you belong to, is in power, then everyone else can't be racist. The only people who can be racist are the people in power.
Mhm.
and everyone else can't be racist because racism is more than just a bias. It's a hierarchy. It's a structure. It's racism isn't just your words and actions and feelings as an individual toward a group of people. It's whether or not your race occupies a particular power position.
Mm-hmm.
And because white people are in America the vast majority, and they exist as a vast majority in the actual power structures of America, which is the government, then uh, Black people are fighting against that system, and Native Americans are fighting against that system, and Asian people are thriving in that system somehow, and fighting against. I'm just being sarcastic halfway through this. I'm not trying to be a politician here.
Well, nobody would take this conversation about race seriously because it's two white guys talking.
It doesn't
about
matter.
it, so
Exactly. So there's the idea that like white people are they just don't get it. It doesn't matter if a Black person says something that sounds racist. It doesn't have any power, so it doesn't matter if it sounds racist. It doesn't. What are they going to do with that? And to me, I think that's just maybe call it something else or something, or that's the term systemic racism and such. It adds a layer of complexity to the term racism, where racism is traditionally it's been overt and action based and verbal, and the way that you interacted with other people, and laws were very, very racist, and they were, Black people weren't considered entire people. That's very true, and that is not something that people are interested in forgetting about, and that's fine.
Well, I think it's because like systemic racism, I would say probably does exist, and that's because it stems from the horrible racist policies that were enacted in the basically any time before fucking the end of segregation. Really, it's like these. I mean, these are all laws that have consequences to today. That their African Americans couldn't get home loans for the longest time because of the color of their skin. So therefore, it's like a lot of the homes that were purchased by then were all bought up by white people. So I can see that having an effect in the contemporary setting, and that maybe it's more difficult for Black people to find homes because they for decades they weren't allowed to buy any homes, and so now all these homes have been purchased by white people and maybe are not very affordable anymore because of inflation. So it's like it's like the seed that was planted, and it's like we've kind of tried to pull the seed up and plant something else there, but there's still remnants of that weed that are just kind of hanging around. That's going to take longer for us to pull out. It's a weird analogy, but
I think
so to me, that's what I think of when people say systemic racism. I'm like, yeah, I could see that because there are a ton of racist ass laws and policies that were in place for a long time that have only been abolished maybe 50 years ago or a little bit longer. So it's like those are still pretty fresh to be taken out of the oven, and so like it's still going to be there.
The effects of people's decisions regarding their interactions with Black people in the past have had a historic effect, and the ancestors of those people are negatively impacted by those decisions of those people who didn't give out those loans, who wouldn't let people live in certain areas, who created projects for people to live in and to never get out of, who put up schools and segregated schools that were so underfunded that they essentially didn't get educated, and they were just way behind their contemporary generation. And of course, all that has an effect. Of course, I have no doubt that that's
still trying to play catch up.
All of history has like a rippling, networking manifestation of effects, and it's super fucking complicated, and we do not understand it. It's like the economy. The economy is fucking uber mysterious, and it involves millions and millions of people, and now billions and billions of people on Earth, and people are trying to figure it out, and that's what they do. They try to figure shit out, and that is probably, it's all good. I think it's all generally a good thing for people to be trying to figure things out and learn things. That's why when I was doing some basic research on critical race theory, I think is what it's called, CRT. It sounds, based on what I've looked at, it's a theory. People are trying to use it. It's a very new theory, and people are trying to figure things out. And just like every theory that is new, it needs to be explored and criticized and understood and figured out and whatever. It's not my problem. And so it's interesting. It's the whole thing is very interesting. I really am interested in like the effect that all of the racial tension has. It's very interesting. Portland, living here, maybe it has some more weight to it because of all the protests and riots that occurred here that caused a ton of damage. And I'm not willing to just chalk it up to bad people doing bad things. I think people are pissed, and I think that the government does shitty stuff all the time. And I don't trust the government, but I also don't trust mobs of fucking people throwing Molotov cocktails.
Yeah, that's how because I mean, you're damaging property that people own that they're not the reason why,
it's tough.
The people who own this local bookstore aren't the people who shot the black guy when he was attempting to be apprehended by the police. Like, they didn't have anything to do with that. So it's like, why would you burn down their store? All you're doing is just ruining their life now for something that they had no part of. No, I agree. There's no point because I feel like your message is lost the moment that you start destroying property, because then the story becomes about, look at all this damage that's being caused. Nobody's going to pay attention to the protest and the message behind your protest when you start destroying things, because then the story becomes this much more new, exciting, easy to sell thing. Like, look at all these things blowing up and being damaged and destroyed, and that's the kind of stuff that sells newspapers and headlines.
Well, and it gets attention, and like, I think a mob or a group, a peaceful protest, like a march on Washington of people who are genuinely interested in peace, because if the goal isn't peace, then I'm not interested. If the goal is peace, then you have to display it, and it's very difficult to hold in your negative emotions and act with what is that, verisimilitude or whatever. No, that's not it. To act with like dignity, what I mean? To be civilized, even when people are not being civilized to you. Now, there's a limit to that, obviously. If you're actually enslaved or you're being beaten or shot or something, I think you should fucking kill the people trying to do that. And revolt may become necessary, and bloody revolution might be necessary. But I think for the most part, peace is the kind of the example, and peace is the goal. So anyway,
and sometimes like that violence and destruction can almost reinforce these like negative stereotypes that people hold on to about groups of people. It's like,
of course it does, but they already want to do that.
Yeah. Well, I just mean, like, if they already
but
think
it's the same with the police
doing barbaric things.
Like, if the police want to portray a kind of moral position, then they have to act morally as well. And so it goes both ways. And it's people just are fucking crazy. They're just not civilized as much as we think they are.
You think part of the issue that stems in our country is because we're sort of like a melting pot for culture? Like, we have so many people of different cultures, and so it's like you put all these people in one place, and it
Well,
just,
in the
it's
government forces you to care about other people's ideas and other people's cultures because
mhm.
they are going to enact laws that help or hinder those particular groups of people, and there are laws that dictate who can and can't get married, how schools are run. All of that stuff affects you and your neighbor and the people down the street and the people in the other side of the country, and so um, everyone's vying for their own uh, use of that power.
I'm
That's
just
why I think
curious.
government should just be limited, and so people have to deal with each other more on a local, independent level, instead of using the power of the government and its military and its police to enact what they think is moral. Especially if you think about like certain really radical spiritual beliefs, like stoning gay people. If
Mhm.
you own the government and that's part of your rule system, then you're stoning people in the streets and it's legal. It's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
I don't think that's okay. It's a very controversial position.
Yeah, we just need a meteor to come and just take care
Yeah.
of this whole fucking problem.
No, yeah, sure. That would do it.
Really, it's like I just get up
I,
every day and I just try
I'm
to
not
get through
worried
my
about
day
it.
without
Yeah.
any
I don't think about this stuff until
violence.
I think about it. And
No,
it's like
yeah,
you
it's
have to pull yourself out of it because
yeah.
it's just thinking. It's just theory. It's just contemplating um other people and
Well, it's like
society and
talking about it, but also
trying to be in
at
power, like trying to
at the same
understand and
time.
control it.
Well, but then at the same time, you have to like embrace like, oh, we can talk about this, but there's no solutions. There's not really a solution to any of this because it would require so many people to come together with a common vision in order to enact some kind of change to
The
like stop a lot of these problems, and that does not happen very often in
the
human
solution
history.
is I'm in power and
Mm-hmm.
I'm God.
There we there we
That's it.
go.
I
Joe
not
Gray,
only am
2024.
yeah, exactly. Not only am I in power, but I also have the ability to control people. And until that, there's no solution.
Full psychic control of your entire
Exactly.
populace.
I have to have complete control over all activities, which is probably why wars are so successful because it's so hard to control people. You just have to kill the majority of them. Like if
I
they're
wouldn't be
mostly dead,
surprised.
you have less people to try to
Mm-hmm.
control, easier to control.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 Well, I feel like people just
Murder.
be fucking nice to other people. That's all you got to do. Also, don't be afraid to admit when you don't fucking know. I think another problem is people just
Yeah,
talk
people,
about things
that's
like they
tough.
know.
That's
What
what
you
I'm
know what I
talking
mean?
about. Confidence is too high. People need to be more humble.
Yeah. Like
Like,
with racism, it's like it's such a fascinating topic, but it's a topic that gets you into trouble really fucking fast if you say like one wrong thing.
yeah.
Even accidentally, like you're just like kind of verbalizing thoughts as they're coming to you, and you're trying to like
Hmm.
piece this thing together,
Yeah.
but then you say the wrong thing, and next thing you know,
Yeah.
you're canceled on Twitter, and people are throwing Molotovs at your house. Um, so it's like it's tough to just be like, I don't really know, but it's like an idea that I want to explore. Like I want to talk about it. I want to hear what other people think.
I do too. It's very interesting
And
because it
really, at the end of
seems
the
to be very
day,
emotional.
yeah, and it's like at the end of the day, I just believe that if you're nice to me, I'm gonna be nice to you. That's it. I mean, really, as long as I don't find out you're like a fucking child rapist or something, like
They could be nice to you
that's
because
what
you're
I
not a
mean. I'm
child.
like, I'm not gonna be nice to a child rapist, period. Even if they're nice to me, I'll be like, get the fuck away from me. Um, but it's like, I mean,
Get the
if you
fuck
just
away from
treat
me.
people with respect instead
Yeah,
of
there's
just
easy like golden
fucking
rules and stuff.
crucifying them,
Yeah.
but people can't seem to do it. It's like
Well,
you
that's
can't
not how
even
power works.
have a
There's
debate with
no
somebody
when you're
without
the
it becoming an
when you
attack on your person.
when you're running the entire country as the president, you're not like, well, I guess we'll just hug. It's
Well,
not
it's
how
because
it
there's like a whole
works.
group of people that don't believe hugging does anything, and a
I
whole other
know,
group of people that
exactly.
believe it does, and it's just yeah.
Yeah, governance, power, hierarchies, they're all very complicated and they require certain like subjugation.
Do you think we've created systems that
Oh
are just
geez.
beyond our ability to, as human beings, to actually manage?
I don't think
Like
I don't
I
think
think
we've created anything. I think that what happens is emergent and out of our control. And we act like it's rational, and we really work toward understanding the universe and what's occurring. But for the most part, it emerges out of millions and millions of activities, and it's not very understandable. Like the fact that we have a democracy over time, and it seems like a decent deal for us as Americans is is I think mostly happenstance. I don't think it's like another part of evolution. Like evolution just happens. There's no controlling it. It just fucking happens, and you end up with a fucking horn out of your head. Like we just ended up with democracy, and the other groups end up with monarchies and stuff. But that's partly due to individual decisions, like somebody killing someone and then taking power that way. But a lot of it is groups of people manipulating each other and then getting lucky, and then somebody gets a disease and they die, and then you become king all of a sudden. It's fucking tons of different things that occur in order for any major civilized system to look a certain way. And we personify everything. So we personify the government through the figurehead of the president, and we personify everything. We make it all seem like it's like us, and we can control it, and there's intentionality to it and all that. But
that's what I mean.
There's no control.
That's what I mean. I feel like we're at this point where that everybody thinks that somebody's in control and nobody's in control. You know what I mean?
We're all winging it.
Everybody's
reacting.
That's like the most horrifying realization that you make as an adult, like as you're coming into adulthood, is the moment that you realize that fucking nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just fucking winging it every day.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And I think that's why confidence has to look a certain way. You have to look confident, or people won't follow you, people won't listen to you, you won't get laid. Like being confident is like
a personal thing.
The evolutionary default for people who want to get somewhere in the world. And then that overconfidence is the problem with, certain interactions. Because people, I think it's all about sex. I really think like literally all of it, everything, all the decisions that people make, all of the bullshit, it's all sex. It's all about getting our genes into someone else to have babies.
Well, it's because if you take us down to the most primal instinct, it's reproducing.
It's like why would men fight each other ever if it wasn't for sexual reproduction?
It's true.
They religion. So if we were asexual creatures, like we replicated ourselves through mitosis or whatever it's called, then we would all get along. We'd be a hive mind. We'd all be kind of the same genes, but with genetic diversity comes more adaptability, and that's allowed us to thrive throughout 3 billion years of life's existence.
Wouldn't you take it like a step further back from like sex and wouldn't it just basically be about your own inherent survivability, right? Because like think of like a promotion at work, right? Let's say you and this other person vying for the same promotion. It's obviously going to create somewhat of a conflict between the two because it's like a competition. I don't feel like there's sex necessarily involved in that. It's more like your own sustainability. But
why do people need money? Why do people want more money?
To have more because stuff.
The only reason men don't want stuff. Men want to portray themselves as being capable of acquiring stuff so that a female will mate with them. That's why that's why rich dudes can be ugly as shit and fat as fuck and they'll still get hot chicks. It's because chicks want dudes who can provide for their babies and for them because because of the investment in being pregnant and taking care of kids takes years, and they need a man who can support them. And so the men vie for the most amount of resources they can. And it's really not your survival that matters. It's your sperm survival. And you're just a vehicle for sperm. And I think that's all of it.
I have a hard time with that only because I have zero desire to have children. I literally had a vasectomy. Like I can't have kids.
I think you're an anomaly in the world.
I was going to say,
you're a product of just immense societal wealth. The fact that we don't die immediately upon birth is why you can have humans that are, more prevalence of people who are just choosing not to have kids. There would be a time like where the pressure would just be too much for you subconsciously if you just saw death all around you and like there were less females around, and those females wouldn't be okay with you not wanting kids at all. You would never find a mate if you were like, no, I just want to have kids. You would probably be gay. I don't know. I'm just making that part up, but I'm just saying like we're our genes our psychology, and it manifests itself in different ways, and part of that is due to the environment. And our environment is lush. We have very little to worry about. Like, you can have men that are not that competitive. I think there's a certain proportion of men that will just never have kids anyway. So you've just sort of like accepted that, and used it as a way to like take control over your life. And a lot of men just will never have kids anyway because they won't be able to compete. And women are selective.
That's
They might get.
don't.
Yeah,
I'm not competitive at all.
I'm not that competitive.
Well, yeah, I could
really,
put a baby in you if you want, but
I'm not that ambitious.
Well, for me, it's like I actually for a while I felt like that paternal urge to have a child. Like, I feel like most people, they feel some pull in that direction at some point. Like, obviously it varies greatly on how hard that pull is, but like, I remember feeling that way. And but I also sort of left it in Vanessa's hands because she was my wife, and I was like,
talk. It's getting hard. You're leaving it in her hands. Keep going.
It's in her hands. So I mean, for the longest time, for me, it was like, I'll have a kid, if you want one.
I think a lot of dudes do that.
But it's like, I also just looked at it from the fact that she had to carry it. My part's the fun, easy part, like,
mostly
she's got to fucking lug that goddamn parasite around for fucking 9 months as it feeds off of her, and then she's got to fucking push that shit out or have it cut out of her. And anyway, so when she elected that she didn't want to have kids and felt no desire, then that just sort of made the decision for me because I didn't feel very strongly either way. And now I just apply plenty of logic to it. I'm like, yeah, the world's overpopulated. It's expensive to raise a kid. I don't feel that much of a desire. I'm kind of selfish. This gives me more money to do the fun things that I want to do, and et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So it's like, I don't feel like any of my decisions are really based on sex.
That just relieves
in a
you.
Reproductive.
If you
I still like fucking.
Take away the ambition of like worrying about mates, then you just relieve yourself of a ton of stress. It's very stressful to try to compete.
Yeah, it frees up my mental space to just be more neurotic and depressed. So it's really been beneficial.
Yeah, you need time for that. Yeah, it's interesting. But I do think that, like, like back in the day when humans were tribal or more primitive, it was the same stuff, the same psychology, the same stuff that's been going, the same reason that, most biological animals, species, they're all biological, but most like mammal species compete. They mostly, the males compete and they fight, or they dance, or they, they do all sorts of things. They build things for their potential mates. They hover around them, or they do also, the mating rituals are fucking prevalent. And I think that all of society is a fucking mating ritual. Like, we just have so many words to make things complex and to occupy our time and to invent and do things. And it all comes from the need to solve problems of survival. And if you can survive longer, you have longer to make decisions about who to mate and who to mate with. And they judge you, and women judge men on all sorts of different things throughout history. Just depends. And Genghis Khan, he won. He did it. He won the lottery or won the battle of competition when it comes to, he has more descendants than anyone else. He killed, he raped, he had sex with the most people you could possibly have sex with, regardless of outcome. And I'm sure a lot of people think that that's a noble pursuit.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a dedicated sect of men who are like,
can you imagine that cult, the Genghis cult? It's so selfish. It's only
cult.
One dude. You can't be in the cult with other dudes.
Yeah, it's just you.
Yeah,
fucking having a god complex.
It's kind of like I don't know, like rich sultans who have like harems in the Middle East. Like, they're just doing it. They won. They're probably very satisfied.
Well, I imagine there's, I think men in particular, which is I think probably a biological thing, and obviously there's anomalies, but I feel like if we had a society that was consequence free in turn, like for men to just have a bunch of sexual partners, I feel like most,
like, if there was no STDs and no babies.
Well, that, but like, I mean, like, if you're married now, it's like if you cheat on your wife, then she can fucking take you for all you want. She wants the
Oh,
divorce.
that's a
Like
major
those kind
issue
of
in
those
America for
societal
sure.
consequences. But I feel like
Legal
if
issues.
men could just go on a fuck spree whenever they felt like it, and there were
Well,
not really any consequences other than obviously impregnating women, because that's a biological thing. I feel like a lot of men would probably have a lot of sexual partners, but I think we've created
they
these like
absolutely would.
societal rules where now it's like we sort of adhere to like the one
Sure.
partner at a time kind of thing. But
I
I think
think,
that's why so many
yeah,
people cheat on,
of course, people cheating like
because
crazy.
it's like you're trying to fight your own fucking biology. Your hormones are just like degrading and dying the longer you're in one singular relationship. And then
Oh
it's
yeah, the
exciting when you meet
oxytocin.
that new
Yeah.
person who shows some interest in you, because now you're trying to attract a new mate. And so your hormones start firing on all cylinders. And
Sure.
that's why people get fucking fat usually in their relationships, because the complacency and the hormones just start going down. So like, and then usually a lot of people, I'm trying to remember. I read a study on this not too long ago, but like typically, like people will lose weight and get in much better shape after a relationship when they're then seeking like a new mate, because your
Competing
hormones
again.
are all kicking in, and so it's like it's easier for you have a higher metabolism because your body's kind of trying to like kind of like you were getting at, like a male is trying to get into like that mating dance mode. So typically, men are more attractive when they're more athletic and a little slimmer, and um
Hmm.
so it's just really interesting. It's like the idea of long-term relationships and marriage is like our stand against our own biology. It's like us fighting against who we are on a primal level, basically. And I think that there are
It
some
is,
people
but
are totally okay with that.
yeah,
Like
but there's
some
a
men I
huge
think are
there's a
fine.
huge benefit to the monogamous system, which is for children, for
Mm-hmm.
the actual children you have. It allows you to protect them. It allows them to have a better life. And so the monogamous relationship is also an evolutionary benefit. And I think that's why it persists. And that's why there are rules toward it, like related to religion, like, like um, you get married, you have kids, you stay together for the kids. I think that um, uh, the idea of just protecting and taking care of those kids is a lot easier in cultures where the whole community takes care of kids, where they aren't so worried about the man leaving because um, the kid is taken care of by multiple mothers, by aunts, by grandmas, by neighbors, like older systems like that. Men and women were more free to have sex with more different people and to hang out with people as they like them, and then go like somebody else for a little while, because the kids didn't suffer. But then as you get into I don't know, farming lifestyles, people are dying like crazy, and people are living farther away from each other maybe, and so you don't have the community to take care of the kids. There's a good book called Sex at Dawn that talks a lot about our instinct for promiscuity, and then some of the kind of societal strictures of monogamy. But I there's major benefits to monogamy for
Mm-hmm.
the child. It just doesn't really benefit the male, in that it's a major sacrifice for him and it's a major sacrifice for the female, of course, but she's already stuck with that sacrifice. If he leaves, like if he leaves, it's still in her belly. She still has to, and then there's this major bonding that they have. Women don't murder their children that often, whether he leaves or not. So
And well, and
it's
men
just the way it
typically
goes.
don't stick around that often either.
Well, and they don't have that kind of
I think that's why it's so much easier
instinctual
for them to
drive.
leave. Like a lot, I feel like
Of course it is.
usually when you're in a single parent household, you're living with your mom because your fucking dad left
It's
for
the
either
vast
for another
majority of that
woman or ran
situation.
out or
Sure.
disappeared or etc.
And yeah, there is a kind of like, there's like evolutionary pressure, and then there's societal things that we push on ourselves that make us typically better. Like the
Mm.
fact that we're not running around raping and murdering each other is better for all of us in general, and we have to kind of create systems of laws and power around it, which is interesting because it's like evolution isn't good. It just is true.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I have two remedies. One is prostitution should be legal
Oh,
because
I
it
totally
gives men
agree.
an outlet. It creates a safe environment for uh, that type of sexual activity. and creates an economy, and it creates, knowledge and information around all that, like, making sure people don't have STDs and making sure they don't get pregnant. And unfortunately, abortion would have to be a part of that, because people are going to end up getting pregnant, and they're not going to want those kids because they're prostitution babies. And then the other one was my other comment was just the idea that as if people were more aware of these kinds of things, I think that, I don't know, it's interesting. The kind of, like, it makes sense that a female would be exceptionally averse to you leaving her. And so any power that they can get over you, they're going to, and they use the state for that. They've used, their family for that, when it came to, like, hey, if you fuck with my daughter, I'm gonna fucking kill you. And all that, benefits her, and it benefits the kids. And so it's just interesting that males are kind of like, I kind of just want to go fuck over here, and that's just going to be true. And they're going to be looking at ladies and stuff like that. And then, you have porn. So, and then chicks get all jealous about porn. And it's like, I don't know. Women don't understand men in that capacity very well, I don't think, because they just don't need to. It's just not beneficial for them to be accepting necessarily of your hypersexuality toward multiple people.
I was gonna say the only way they possibly could is they would have to have a libido that like operates on the same level as.
I think some do. I think some females absolutely
some
have
do.
like high sex drives.
And the thing
Promiscuity is no big deal
like,
to them.
I feel like if generally speaking, if men and women shared a similar libido, I feel like you wouldn't need to be promiscuous, because your sexual needs would probably be being met by your partner who has the same
No,
drive
because
that you
part
do.
of, because you mentioned it earlier, you get bored with each other. Your oxytocin levels go down, your serotonin levels go down, your dopamine levels go down with each other, and you have to do weirder and more interesting things to create novelty. And what really you're wanting is different sexual partners. And I think females do too. I think
Yeah, it's
they
true.
definitely look at dudes and go, man, I want that seed up in my vajiji. And they want to, there's this desire to, like when I was younger, I didn't really have the notion of sex was for children, for having children. Sorry, that sounded bad. Sex is for having children as
it's probably
when
not
you're an
good for
adult.
kids
Yeah.
to be doing
Anyway,
at a certain age.
whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
That it's for
We got it.
procreation purposes. And then now, as like a kind of like much more mature adult, even though I'm not like that mature, I'm much more mature than I was when I was 14.
I hope so.
Like now, like if I'm like masturbating and I think about having a kid with that hot person in the porn, it's very, very effective. Like that is not like a weird thing for me. That's like, I can imagine myself getting married to her. Like it's a very quick
your
kind
porn
of
fantasy, like you have like
if I
sequel.
Obviously I don't do this all the time, but if I go there and I go, oh my God, what would it be like to have a child that would be, and this is the weirdest part, is that like beauty, when it comes to beauty and like why someone's more attractive than another. And I think that's just because if the more attractive she is, the more attractive my child will be, the more likely they'll have an easy time mating. And so really you're thinking about the next generation of sex. So I'm like, if I have sex with a really hot chick, then my daughter will be beautiful and they will have no trouble having sex with someone, and then their kids will have no trouble having sex with someone. So the most attractive person you can have sex with is who you should have sex with, so that your child has the best chance to have sex.
It's a survival imperative.
So it's just this
physical attraction.
It's all about genes. Like all of that is not, it doesn't care about me as like a sensitive human being. It just wants to get those genes into the future.
I wonder if part of that is because of your age, not that like you're old, but I just mean like you're getting older, and so I feel like maybe it's like you have your own little biological internal clock. It's like, oh fuck, man, we gotta get some seed planted like ASAP.
No, I think subconsciously, yes.
Yeah.
Consciously, I'm not in a hurry, but subconsciously, I think that's definitely the case. As I get older, my need and instincts to have kids, and as I see other people having kids and start thinking about what it's going to be like to be older and not have kids, that all comes into play. But consciously, I'm not in any kind of a hurry. because I'm just not that competitive.
There you go.
I'm one of those, I'm a beta dude. And that's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. But fucking whatever. What am I gonna go like fight that and go like get a sword and fucking fight a dude for a chick?
There's an attractiveness and like a respectfulness in somebody who can admit that they're their limitations.
Yeah, that's only because you're also kind of a beta.
No, me? Oh, for sure.
An alpha would never say that. Alpha would be like, exactly. You pussy ass little bitch. I can't admit any of my frailties.
What's funny is I feel like generally speaking, I'm pretty beta. But I feel like there are moments that I feel like this alpha tendency, like, and it's usually a protectiveness over like my wife. Like if some other dude is like when I think about the prospect of a guy like
hurting
her or making like sexual remarks towards her, it like
makes
creates this like fury inside of me that I feel. And so it's like I feel like generally speaking I'm beta, but there's like a little hidden alpha, like a protectiveness that sort of dwells
even the smallest chimpanzee in the group will still like snarl and try to fight back. It just will get his ass kicked. It's fine. It's just at some point you run up against an actual like monster and they fuck you up. But I think that too. Like what I'm thinking is like I'm a beta when it comes to like being fairly non-aggressive toward other people.
That's what I was gonna say. I was like, my thing is I don't really like confrontation. I
don't enjoy fighting.
Just talk through whatever the issue is. I don't really want to resort to physical violence.
But the part where I'm not as much of that is when I'm at work and I'm a manager. I'm somewhat of a leader. I'm in charge of a building. I'm in charge of a sales environment, and I take it with seriousness and I take it with authority, and I don't let people just walk over me. And I tell people what they can and can't do sometimes. And I don't. That part of me is pretty confident. It's pretty. I make mistakes sometimes. I made a mistake the other day at work that was kind of really made me feel dumb, but I had to brush it off and keep moving and just realize it wasn't that big of a deal. But I had to tell some old guy he had to wear a mask even though he had an oxygen tank. Not that that's the worst example of that's like the most beta thing. Like I fucking beat this old man down, but no, I have like, strong, male figures in the store all the time that are intimidating, but I have to, at least act like I'm in charge because I am in charge, and I get the backup of the police if I need them. You go.
The true office, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's the thing about like a beta needs to be smarter because they have to come up with solutions that are like not just brute force related. I have to like talk my way out of things. I have to use logic on people. I have to like think of what they're imagining so that I can relate to them so that I can convince them, because I got to be persuasive. I can't just fucking punch them in the face or just look down on them meanly. So I think that's
look up at them meanly.
I can't look down at them meanly. I can only look up at them meekly.
Physically, I fucking
meekly.
Can't, okay.
No, I literally can't. So I think it's like a personal awareness and being honest, like about who you are. That is kind of liberating, but also, I don't know, just accurate.
Well, I feel like with human beings, the concept of like an alpha is probably a lot different than it is in like,
I think it's complicated.
Most other mammal societies that are more primal, because I feel like you have to apply logic into the equation when you're talking about humans, because just because you're not like a overtly domineering or aggressive person doesn't mean that you're not able to overcome a lot of obstacles in your life through cunning and intelligence. Kind of like what you're saying is it's like you may not be able to physically be intimidating, but you can think around the person who is trying to be physically intimidating.
Sure. Well, and women choose men based on totally, different things. Intelligence is massively attractive. That's why I think like people who are funny are attractive, because there's a certain level of intelligence that you have to look at something in a funny way. To point something out, you have to be a little bit confident to point something out that's a little bit naughty or a little rude or a little surprising. So that's another one of those competitive dances that men have to come up with if they're not super strong or brutish or
attractive or athletic or
physically beautiful in any way or have tiny dicks. Human culture is fucking complicated as shit.
It is, yeah.
I think
I don't envy you in terms of trying to seek out companionship. I wouldn't know the fucking first thing to do if my marriage suddenly ended for some reason. Welcome to the incel club, population me, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Tones. Population sadness. Hello, darkness, my old friend. That's why I'm learning guitar.
Maybe you'll be able to be
36.
a bard that lures unsuspecting women. Well, there you go. It's a skill that might work for you in the long run. You write like a really beautiful love song.
I think I'm trying to relive my youth in my 30s.
It was stolen from you.
I'm exercising, I'm learning guitar, I'm like doing photography, I'm doing all the stuff you do when you're like 18 and you're like trying to discover yourself. I'm like, no, I'll do it when I'm 30, bitch.
But I feel like a lot of men do that, as long as you don't like,
of course they do,
blow a paycheck on like a muscle car that you don't need. I think you'll be okay.
Dude, if I could buy a muscle car for one of my paychecks, I would do it tomorrow.
Well, I imagine if you're doing
that's a cheap ass muscle
car that's in the best of shape, but you have plans to
you don't know what my paychecks look like. Yeah, no, that would be a whole thing. If I was really into mechanics, that would make sense, but I am not. I'm into poetry and singing like a real alpha. Like a true alpha.
Hey, it might work though. I have the right girl.
So we're getting close to the end of this, right? We didn't talk about the thing we were going to talk about. We still got more Halloween stuff to come up with.
Let's do it. We can do the spooky episode next week.
We'll do spookies next time.
Okay, that sounds good. Because I want some time anyway if we want to talk about our favorite like horror movies and games and stuff.
I started a list myself.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I need a little time to like compile that. So
you have way more thoughts on the matter.
I have too much.
Yeah, it'll be mostly about you on that one. But Halloween is coming up, so we'll try to get that one in soon. But there is one thing I wanted to promote here shamelessly, and then we'll do recommendations. Let me show you my screen. I think that's West Side Story.
You could just say it is, and I'll believe you.
It's West Side Story.
Okay, perfect.
Happy to be in America. Happy to be in America. Happy to be in America. Anyway.
Red, white, and blue.
Red, white, and blue. So I last podcast we talked about me going to Hawaii, and I just wanted to let people know that I put together a journal, a long-winded kind of photographic, video, and writing about my trip, and so they can go to my blog, joesnutsblog.com, to check that out. It's got lots and lots of content, lots of photos. It's kind of like a virtual tour of my vacation, and obviously it's kind of selfish of me to promote it and be like, hey, look at what I did. But I think people might like it if they're ever planning on going to Hawaii.
As you're scrolling through this, I'm like, there's a lot of beautiful imagery here, but nothing quite as beautiful as a shirtless Joe laying on a boat and just all of the intricate hairs and the
I have to accept myself. And while here, I'll show you. If you're on YouTube, you'll see what I'm talking about. Where is it? There we go.
See, look at that.
This is not alpha. Like on display, but this is real. This is what I look like on a boat, catamaran, I was
see,
chill as fuck.
What is presented in this image, though, right, for the female audience, is a man that is attainable. It's not going to make you feel bad about your own body. This is a guy who you can lay next to confidently and actually might bolster your
if
own
anything, I'm
self-confidence.
attainable. All right, we're done there. Look at how attainable I am, right? That's got to be a band name, just attainable. This is me wearing my Sean Carroll podcast shirt about entropy that I wore the other day. Anyway, that is available. And then today I went out for a lovely little stroll, and I did another photo journal because I can't stop. And I just went to Blue Lake and I took some pictures. I'll go through them pretty quickly, but I liked some of the pictures I took today, just in my own backyard. And I mean, not literally. This little squirrel was super nipply. I thought that was just fucking hilarious.
Oh my gosh. Are you sure those weren't like little tumors?
I don't know. I found this little bird. I liked that little birdie bird. And then there were just billions of fucking geese. Duck. I really like this picture, actually. This like kind of golden duck.
I like how the duck in like the lower left corner is checking out the ass of that duck in the middle.
He's like, God, I want to bang that one, but I'm too beta.
Yeah, too.
Young ducks.
Maybe if that guy over there doesn't make a move, I'll think about making a move, but I don't really want to compete with that guy.
Anyway, that is my shameless plug. Photos on the website.
If you want the image of a very attainable man,
the image. Feel free to use that image. I don't care. Just that one. That's the only image that can be memed. I like when I type in Channing.
I know.
It doesn't come with you. He's an alpha.
Channing,
do you think? Okay, so here's a question. Because actors are pretending, are there really any alpha actors? Are they all just betas in disguise?
They are. I think you could make the argument that they are betas in disguise. Talk about beta. Look at that whole slew of carousel of photos there.
Look
beta this. On a beach.
Look at this guy. Look at this fucking pensive motherfucker.
Some of these
this is from
that's from one of our podcasts.
Yeah, when Vanessa did photos for us. Yeah. Look at this kid. He's all sad.
Depressed.
Dutch angles.
Yeah. Vanessa did all these for me too. It was like a little photo shoot on the beach. I need to update it because I don't really have hair anymore.
Super sad though.
I'm pretty much sad.
Oh, your eyes are closed here. Are you praying?
That was actually my Christian rock album.
What is the name of that band? Fucking unattainable. What is this one? Oh, In Romantic Dreams. These are cool. I have read most of these books, but not all of them.
Yeah, Amazon's weird. It like has them listed like multiple times.
Yeah, in different order.
Been janky. It's gotten better. I think it's because they've changed their systems over the years, and so it created duplicate listings. Because any of the more recent books, they just list. It's like one listing, and then you click on it, and you can pick whether you want the paperback or the Kindle. Whereas some of the older ones, it's like they have them listed as two separate products for some reason. It's kind of strange. Like Desolate Pages. Why is that listed twice? What the fuck?
Yeah, that is weird. You have a $14.95 version and a $10 version.
I think it's because they're different editions.
Oh,
see, one was from February 25th and then apparently May 10th. So there must have been some sort of like revision that I made that I don't remember because that was fucking 4 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Tease what it is, Reginald.
Yes. Back to the British.
Yes.
All right. What is your recommendation?
So, keeping in the spirit of October Spookfest, I'm going to recommend a book I just finished reading last night titled The Ravenous. It's by Amy. I'm going to probably butcher her last name. Lukavics. Lukavics.
How do you spell it?
Lukavics. Amy is spelled A.
Lukavics?
Lukavics, maybe.
It sounds Russian.
But it's an interesting little spooky tale. It's about this family on a military base where the father, I think, is a general or something. Anyway, he's not really present in the story because he's away. So it's these four sisters and their mother, and the mother is kind of like sort of like a depressed alcoholic who spends a lot of time in bed and sort of not really a part of her daughter's lives. The daughters are the teenager to like preteen age. Um, and the story is about how the youngest daughter, during like an altercation that the mother has with the sisters, the mother accidentally, like she goes to shove one of the older sisters, and the sister moves out of the way, and she ends up pushing the littlest sister down the basement stairs behind her and kills her. And then the mother takes her body to somebody and is basically brings her back resurrected. But as horror stories go, when you bring people back from the dead, they're not necessarily the same person. It's just a really well done book. It kind of reminded me of like Pet Cemetery or something like that. Not quite as like dire and dark like Pet Cemetery. The characters who are brought back are like evil right away, whereas this young girl, she comes back and is like kind of mostly herself, but has like this sort of insatiable hunger for a particular type of meat, if you catch my meaning. But it was really good. It's pretty creepy, and it's a very interesting look at kind of like the bond between sisters in the face of this like supernatural thing that's going on that they all know is wrong, and like kind of what they do to sort of satiate their sister. But it's really good. It was I enjoyed it. It's a pretty quick read. It's not very long. It's well written. It's easy to follow. It's pretty quick.
Cool.
Pretty quick little spooky Halloween read if somebody wants something. I think it was on a list of like top horror novels from last year or the year before. It's a pretty recent novel, but I picked it up on Kindle on a sale some time ago, and since it was this month and it was spooky, I jumped on it.
I think they made a movie based on it. I thought, or maybe it's just called Ravenous.
There is a movie called Ravenous from the 90s. It's about the Donner Party, where it's like a spin on the Donner Party. That movie's fucking awesome, though. I love Ravenous. That's one of my favorite. It's like billed as a horror movie, but really it's just an interesting, I guess you could call it like a period horror movie, but it's not like that scary. It's just fascinating. If you like Westerns and like are interested in the idea of the Donner Party, it's totally worth watching. Have you ever never seen?
I don't think I've ever seen it. If it's a Western, I'm down to check it out. Anyway.
Well, I mean, it takes place in that time period, so it's like Civil War era, that time period. So
you consider the Revenant a Western?
I do, but it's almost like a survival Western. If I was gonna like try to really,
it's definitely survival.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like a Western because it's that time period.
I think it's just because it's that time period and there's Indians in it, Native Americans, Indigenous Peoples Day.
If you really want to break it down, you would find out what tribes are present and then list them by their tribe.
Oh, I don't know what it was. I'm sure it's in that movie.
I think so.
Yeah, I think Native American history and culture and like. If like you could get real into it and like really learn a lot. I think that would be kind of interesting.
When I wrote Anathema, because I actually based the tribes that were in the Nescoan area at the time. So I was actually studying their like what tribes were there. Kind of tried to get an idea of some of the language that they spoke and things like that. It was pretty cool because I was like I kind of wanted it to be a faithful look at the history of that actual area.
Yeah, I was in Nescoan recently.
It was really cool for me to visit it because it's the first time that I've ever like set a story in a place that I don't live in necessarily, but it was like a place that I studied and then I went and visited, and it felt like I was scouting a location for a movie, but it was for a book.
It's super cool. You should definitely do them. For books and stuff. I know writers do that kind of shit. I'm sure, they like go do ride-alongs if they're going to write about cops or whatever.
Well, because like when the Western Sins trilogy, it all takes place in like the Oregon, Washington area because I find it a fascinating area. And so it's like, but it's all set in like towns that are fictional for the most part. Like they're just towns that I fucking make up because there were so many little podunk towns back then that, just died off for whatever reason. So it's like, I take a lot more creative liberty, but then with Anathema, I was like, I want to set this in like real places with real history and then use that history to like bend it to my will of the story. What's your recommendation?
I'm doing little bits of writing.
Look like you were looking something up, so I was just sort of
sorry,
buying you some time here.
Sorry. My recommendation is the Hunger Games. I was introduced to them through the books, and the books are actually really good. And then I watched the movies, and I thought the movies were really good as well. And they
Oh,
just
interesting.
put all of the movies on Hulu, which was perfect because I've been looking to rewatch all of them. I went on a Harry Potter binge
Mhm.
and watched all those movies. And then I was like, I really like the Hunger Games. And then I watched them. They're not nearly as good as the Harry Potter movies, but I do enjoy them, and I recommend the books and the movies.
Have you ever seen or read Battle Royale?
I know of it. I
I
think I
recommend it.
watched it. I think I watched it.
The movie's pretty a
I think it
pretty
was on
solid adaptation of the
Netflix,
book.
and I remember a scene where like there's like a white van, and it was pulling up to this area, and that's like somebody was getting taken and put into this area, and then that's when it all started, and all these kids were murdering
It's
each
like
other.
literally the same idea. Like I would be blown away if oh gosh, I can't think of the lady who Suzanne Collins if she did not read that book or watch that movie before because I was like I remember when Hunger Games like the trailers for the movie first came out I'm like this is literally Battle Royale like what the fuck. So
Yeah,
like I think
it's exactly taken from it.
uh Hunger Games I think gets a lot more into like the dystopian
Yeah,
societal rising up against the
yeah,
government or whatever than Battle Royale. Battle Royale is much more at least the first book and movie are much more focused on the island and these kids murdering each other. Have you also watched it's huge on Netflix right now, Squid Game?
no, I
You
just
should
feel like it's
definitely
another one of those
you
kind of
should definitely
movies.
watch it. You'd like it.
Yeah,
The premise feels kind of like it's sort of like Hunger Games and Battle Royale, but it's much more
darker.
interesting. Well,
Oh,
because in
much
like in
more
those,
interesting. Hmm.
it's like they're put on an island, they just have to fight to the last man. Whereas this is like these adults playing fucked up games with fatal
Oh,
consequences
yeah,
for money, and they're
yeah,
voluntarily signing up
yeah,
because their lives are so miserable or
yeah.
they need money so badly that they're
It's
willing to
like
put their
the
lives on the
ultimate
line.
in exploitation.
And it's fascinating as you're watching the show because it has a really great cast of characters, and you're part of the fun is like finding out what the next game is that they have to play because it's all based off childhood games that they played like in the in recess and stuff. So it's like you're like, oh fuck, what's this next game gonna be? Like, how is it gonna be twisted? It's you should definitely watch it. It's really cool. You'd enjoy it.
Well, I'll probably check it out now that you mention it, because
Mhm.
I'm skeptical of like exceptionally um violent things in like movies,
It's
just because a
not,
lot of times it's kind of boring. It's just
yeah.
kind of like overly grotesque and a little bit disturbing, and I just don't want to like watch it before I go to bed or before I go to work or before I fucking do anything, so I just don't end up watching it.
It's much more layered than that. It's not like a gimmick thing where it's like, oh, what are they like? There's that aspect of it where it's like, what game are they gonna have to play next? What
Hmm.
what horrible things gonna happen to them while they're playing this game? There's like that layer to it, but like I said, like the characters are really interesting. There's characters you actually like root for and are hope you're gonna make it somehow. It's a good like character drama while also being like an interesting mystery because part of the plot that you're following is this undercover cop who infiltrates the game and is like behind the scenes learning about how it operates, and it's a very well done show. It's like there's just a lot of layers to it,
Hmm.
beyond like that basic premise of people who really need money playing fucked up games to get it, basically. Like I feel like that's kind of the hook that gets people into the show,
Yeah,
and then as you start watching it you're like,
there's
oh, there's
more.
actually a lot more to it than just that.
Yeah.
And it's not terribly long either. I think it's like 8 or 9 episodes. I
Hmm.
mean, kind of
I'll have to check it
shorter
out.
for a season. But it's really good. We watched it with like the the English dub, which I later read was like the worst way to watch it because apparently the translation, if you just read the subtitles, is much better. But
Hmm.
I didn't think the dub was that bad. I mean, dubs are always kind of weird because the voice never quite matches
Yeah.
not only like obviously the mouth movements, but like the character never really looks like that's what his voice would sound like, kind of a
Yeah.
thing for some reason. But the dub wasn't too bad if you don't want to have to sit there and read the whole show. But
Sure.
if you do, I think
Yeah.
if I watch it again, I'll just watch the subtitled version to see how
Yeah.
different.
I think it's usually an emotional disconnect because, well, the voiceover actor just can never be in the moment because they're not physically there.
No,
They're only
exactly.
watching it, and so they're it's always a bit less physical. Whereas the person who's there is physically moving and like falling and jumping and getting into it much more.
Yeah.
And it's that person's voice, which we can recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the movie Old Boy? We've probably talked about it before.
Yeah, I've seen
Korean movie, the original
both versions
Old Boy.
actually.
Yeah.
What's sad and probably be sacrilegious, I actually saw the American version first with Josh Brolin, and then I ended up watching the original later, which they're like identical movies. I don't really, because some people are like, "Oh, the remake's stupid." Da, da, da. I'm like, it's just the same movie with American actors, so
It's not as good at all. The problem with the new one, because I saw the old one a long time ago, and then like years later I saw the Josh Brolin one, and the problem is Josh Brolin isn't as emotive as the Korean actor is during his performance. And I think that in the original one, it's just dirtier and feels more I don't know, it just feels less produced and less clean as
Well,
far
they don't
as
have that Hollywood money.
yeah. And Josh Brolin is like a great fighter in it, but I don't buy him as this kind of like downtrodden guy who was locked up forever. He's too big and muscular and like imposing. And the guy in the original was much kind of less obvious of a hero. And then obviously it ends really horribly. But I saw it the other way around. And I get that if you watched the Josh Brolin one first, it would change my opinion because that one's probably a better movie if you haven't seen the first one.
Well, from like a production standpoint, probably. I just remember watching the Josh Brolin one first for some reason, and then everybody was like, "Oh my god, that movie sucks! Like the original is the only way to watch it." So I was like, "Well, fuck, I better watch the original. This must be like maybe they
and it
changed like the plot substantially or something." And then I remember watching the original. I'm like, that was good, but ultimately, like from a narrative standpoint, it was the same movie for the most part.
The problem is if you don't know the narrative as you're learning of it from the old version, it's just has more weight because of the acting of that person and and then once you know the end, once you know the story, like either movie does that story. It's just I think there is a difference between them in that one's older and less produced, and so it just has more like it's more gritty.
It kind of reminded me of there's that it's like a vampire film called Let the Right One In, which is a foreign, I think it's Swedish, I want to say. And then they did an American version called Let Me In, and they're narratively they're the same movie, but the foreign one is so much better. Like there's just like an atmosphere to it, and the actors like they just sort of bring like a more haunting presentation than like Let Me In, the American version, because again the American version just feels sort of Hollywoodized. Like there's just like a clean palette to it that's not present in the original. But I also watched them in the correct order in terms of I watched the foreign one and then a few years later watched the new one. So I imagine had I watched the original Old Boy first, I probably would have had a much stronger affinity. But ultimately, I think they're both fine movies. It almost comes down to, do I feel like reading a movie right now, or do I just want to watch movie while I half pay attention to it, kind of a thing. So it's like sometimes I'd rather, if I really want to sit and focus and watch, and read and all that, I'll watch the original. But if I want to like put a movie on while I'm fucking grinding Outposts and Far Cry 6 or something, and I'm like half watching the movie, half playing the game, then I'll put on something that I can just listen to.
Do you recommend Far Cry 6?
I recommend it if you feel like playing Far Cry. It's just Far Cry. It's literally not,
I'm enjoying it.
Have you been playing Far Cry 6?
Yeah, it's like the only game I haven't played a game in like 2 months, and I got it when it came out digitally, and I've only played like 2 hours. I'm still on the original island, but I like that there's It's just new. It's different. It feels really good. It plays really well.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
having
one of those
fun just
movies
doing
or
some
movies.
new stuff. It's the
Yeah,
same stuff. It's
it's the
exactly the same,
same
but I'm
game.
just
Yeah,
I'm
that's.
happy to do it in a new place with new guns and new people. And
I don't like that that there's not like a leveling system now.
yeah,
Like all the
that
perks are
was
just
always a
tied to
big deal.
equipment you find. So I'm just like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's more
so
like loadouts.
yeah, so it's like you're just building a loadout and then so it's like I feel less incentive. Part of the fun of the old Far Cry's
Yeah,
taking the outposts and stuff is like you were earning
get
XP,
XP.
leveling up
Yeah,
and getting stronger and better.
yeah.
And so there was like that little carrot on the stick. But now I'm just like, well, I have this gear that's working pretty well for me. So
I
either
don't
I
need
go
anything. Yeah,
around looking for new chests to maybe find gear that's better than what I've got. I don't know. I
it's more
don't like
loot
that system,
based.
but
Yeah.
um
But you upgrade your
ultimately it's good.
weapons, which I like. I like
Hmm.
the idea of like having a ton of options to customize my weapons and stuff like that, which kind of makes up for some of that because
Yeah.
you can just make your weapons more powerful. So yeah, I'll see if I like it. I do like the skill trees. It's like more RPG than
Hmm.
like Call of Duty or something.
There's just something fun. Like I remember like in Far Cry 3, for example, it's like when you first starting out, like you're
Yeah,
playing like a college kid dude, like college age dude
yeah,
who didn't know really anything about killing. And so it's like it was interesting to like watch the progression from being like an average everyday college student
yeah. To a
to like by the end
badass.
of the game, you're like a vicious killer that can like chain all these takedowns and just
Yeah,
like shoot people in the head and like all it like because he just built up all these skills as you were playing through the game.
yeah,
Whereas in this one, I feel like it almost feels kind of static. Like you're just sort of a pretty awesome fighter in the beginning, or
yeah.
guerrilla, sorry, and then you're just
Gorilla.
uh I guess like you'll find some better armor, but ultimately you're not really.
Yeah.
It's like you're not getting any new skills or anything. It's just they're like, oh, these pants like carry more sidearm
Yeah.
ammo.
But it is interesting because I think that they're doing it on purpose because they know anyone playing it is already played all the Far Cry games. So they're like,
Mhm.
we're not going to make a normal Far Cry game. We're going to make something for somebody already like who doesn't want to wait to get the flamethrower, who doesn't want to wait to get the grappling
Mhm.
hook. We're just going to give you all this cool new stuff and tell you a new story in a new place and say, go shoot.
Yeah.
And like the hunting isn't as big of a deal, which I loved the hunting. I think
See,
three
that's
was
what I did
perfect.
too.
Three was perfect.
Three's the best one because
Yeah.
it was fun. I was like, oh, there's actually like a reason to go hunt these animals
Yeah.
because I want to carry more arrows or I need another
Yeah.
gun holster.
Yeah.
So it like made sense. It was like the first game that used hunting in a sensible way where I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I need this specific skin to make this quiver or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just weird because it seems like they really simplified it down. And I think
They
you're
like
on the right track.
arcadified it.
They kind of were like, I think they're trying to have it reach like the lowest common denominator in a way where it's like
A little bit.
anybody can
Yeah.
really like hop into this game and play it.
Yeah.
It's not very complicated at all.
Yeah.
Um,
But it does have
it's
2-player
fun.
co-op.
It's one of those games where I hop on it for like I don't know, a couple of hours and I'll bust through a little section of the map, clearing some stuff, and then I usually
Yeah.
hop over and play something else. But.
Well, the idea of doing like taking out an outpost being really sneaky is still the same because you don't need a bunch of interesting.
Mhm.
I mean, some of the abilities are important, I guess, but you kind of already have a lot of them. Like
That's what I mean.
like
It's sort of
just
like you can just do
killing people
everything.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not an RPG like it used to be.
No.
It's different. But I'm just happy that I found a game I can waste some time on because I've been bored with video games, and I'm excited for a few of the new games that are coming out, but not very many.
Yeah, there's not much else coming out this year other than Battlefield and Call of Duty again.
Yep.
Which I have not heard great things about either one from like the betas
No.
that are going on right now. So I was like, well,
Yeah, I'm not that excited about either of those.
Halo Infinite looks pretty cool though too. That comes out soon. I think in December, end of November, somewhere in there.
Yeah. I'll just wait till Elden Ring comes out.
There you go. That's like early next year, February, I think.
Is it really that soon?
Or January. It's either January or February next year.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
that's
already
crazy.
been like
I didn't
rated by
realize
the.
that.
It's already been rated by the Korean ratings board, which means there's like a playable build out there for people to rate.
Like a final, at least for sensory purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I
Elden Ring
didn't
release
realize.
date. January 21st. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like
I bet it gets
2.5
pushed back. I don't know. They don't.
about 3
From
months
Software
out.
doesn't usually push stuff back.
I don't think I feel like it was supposed to come out this year and they probably pushed it back due
Yeah.
to like the pandemic. So
Yeah.
I mean, you got to figure they've been working on this game.
They do
since
such a good
Dark
job
Souls
when they come out with stuff.
3? No, Sekiro would have been their last game.
They were probably
Sekiro
working on
came out-
Elden Ring for years.
They were probably. I feel like it was probably the team that made Dark Souls 3 has been working
Yeah.
on Elden Ring, and another team was making Sekiro.
That would make sense based on the fact that Sekiro is so different.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely different. Yeah, cool. That's exciting.
Just a few months to go.
I didn't realize. I forgot. I'll have a new obsession to waste even more time in my life about.
I am very curious to see how that game turns out.
Yeah, me too. It better be good.
I'm sure it will. It will be. I mean, it's been a while since From Software's probably made anything that like sucked inherently. I feel like they haven't made anything that sucked since Demon
nothing.
Souls.
Yeah,
Like,
they're on their worst day.
It's been great.
Their worst day is everyone's wet dream. Like as a developer.
Yeah.
People wish they could have that kind of success and popularity.
It has a very dedicated following. It's gonna be one of those, people are gonna be obsessed with that game when it comes out.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I think it's time to go, dude. We're over we're right at 2 hours.
I was gonna say I gotta go.
It went over. Run. Oh my god, 8:20 at night. You're going on.
Yeah, I've been going at about 8:30.
Nice.
It's because like during this time of year, it's so fucking cold in the morning when you get up. So it's like if I get up at like 5:30 in the morning, it's like freezing outside and dark and I'm tired. Yeah. So I switched I probably until like summer gets a little closer again. I've just started running in the evening.
Yeah.
It's kind of a nice wind down activity at the end of the day. It's like kind of a way to relax in a weird way, even though you're running.
Well, you come back and you're drained and you're ready to go to bed.
Yeah, basically I come back and take a shower and read for a bit and pass right the fuck out. Yeah. And then I get up I still get up a little early because I take my dog for a walk in the morning so she can get some exercise.
Sure.
If I can get her old bones out of she's at that age where I feel like the cold, she feels it in her joints. There's like some mornings where she's like, I'm not really interested in doing this.
Yeah I don't care if I gotta poop or pee. I just I'll chill. They turn into old people. All right, dude. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll check you next time.
Yeah.